Hi, I'm Shailin and I sew. It is Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and also today is Friday, which means it's Filipino Friday. So to finish off the end of the month, I wanted to share a little bit of my culture with you. This is going to be a video on a brief history of what the Baro't saya is, as well as how I made this piece for one of my clients. So before we begin on the history of the Baro't saya, I wanted to put a disclaimer out that I'm not a fashion historian, I'm not a cultural expert, so I'm presenting this information as a first-generation Filipino American who is just interested in our culture. I have done some research, I have some books on the Filipino fashions, and I've asked my mom about what she knows about the Baro't saya, as well as referenced some of my favorite Filipino designers like Vinta Gallery and Cambio Co. And they have some blogs about the history of the terno, which of course goes back to the Baro't saya. So during the pre-colonial era, that is the time before the Spanish came and colonized the Philippines, a lot of people agree that the baro or blouse and a form of skirt was used throughout the whole Philippines. So in the northern region of the Philippines, they wore what is called the tapis, which is a rectangular hand-woven piece of cloth that was wrapped around your waist and tied. In the Visayan region, they wore what's called a patadyong, which is a tube-like rectangular piece of cloth, also hand-woven, that was worn around the waist and also tied to stay on. And similarly, the Maranao people also wore what's called a malong, which is very similar, a tube-like piece of fabric that was worn around the waist. And you can see a lot of these styles today, and that's because the Baro't saya is actually the basis of the modern-day Filipiniana. So during the pre-colonial era, the baro was a blouse that was worn, and it was a simple piece of fabric. So it was T-shaped. They generally used piña cloth because that's what it was available and what was woven in the Philippines, which is a sheer fabric. The skirt pieces were hand woven and regional, so like I said earlier, the tapis was hand woven. The Visayan region had the patadyong, so they liked their plaids and hablon fabrics, and then in the south, the Maranao people had their malong, which has the more intricate and colorful hand-woven fabrics that you still see today. Now, during the colonial era, the Spanish came and brought Catholicism with them, which meant that they brought their more modest views towards how women should go out in public. So during this time, that's when they started bringing in additional pieces to the Baro't saya. Now, saya is a Spanish term for skirt, so I believe that that's when the Baro't saya started looking more similar across the Philippines. But again, you can still see regional differences even nowadays. So at this point, we now have four pieces of the Baro't saya. The baro, the saya, the long skirt. In some regions, they still wore a tapis or a patadyong over top of the saya, and the pañuelo, which covered the shoulder. Now, by the 1800s, this silhouette started becoming more like what we see today, and it started becoming called the traje de mestiza, which you may now know as the Maria Clara gown or the Filipiniana. Now, I'm not going to go into detail about how the Baro't saya came into becoming the terno, because once you strip it down to its basics, which is the blouse, the skirt, and the matching pieces like this, you start seeing how the Baro't saya turned into the modern-day Filipiniana. Now, like I said earlier, this is just a very, very brief history of what the Baro't saya is and how it became to be the modern-day Filipiniana. You can still see these types of outfits today. I still see the pañuelo very heavily used. If it's not the terno sleeve with the butterfly sleeve, you'll see this piece right here in majority of more formal wear in the Philippines. So now that we've gone over that, I wanted to talk about this piece in particular. Was created for a client who has Indonesian and Filipino heritage. So we talked a little bit about how traditional she wanted to be versus how modern, and she decided to go more towards the traditional route and really wanted to hone in on her childhood. So this is something that she wore as a child, and we have just upgraded it with the fabric as well as the length. So a younger child would wear like a knee-length skirt. This one you can't see in the video, but it is going to be calf length on her. Now, as far as the material goes, I used a Indonesian batik fabric because she wanted to tie her Indonesian side into her Filipino side. So this was our way of mixing the cultures together. For all you sewists, the skirts is a basic quarter circle skirt. I did add pockets in this, of course. But it's a basic quarter circle skirt to get that nice sleek silhouette. And the panuelo and the kerchief up here is a square piece of fabric that I've just hemmed. So those pieces are very easy. They're just big enough to wrap around your shoulder, to wrap around your head, and so on. Now this is the Baro't. Traditionally it's made out of piña cloth, which is sheer and structured material. Now, piña cloth is still really hard to find, even in the Philippines, because it's still hand woven. I don't think that there is a way to machine weave piña. Because of this, I decided to use organza, which has the similar sheerness to it as well as similar structure. It's not as structured as piña cloth from what I can see, but it's also not as drapey as chiffon, so that's why I opted for organza. For all you sewists that are watching that want to make your own Baro't, my biggest recommendation and the easiest way to do so is to copy a t-shirt that fits you really well and make sure that the t-shirt doesn't have too much stretch. Because organza doesn't really stretch too much, you want to make sure that that fits over you when you try to wear it. If you'd like to go more in the pattern drafting side of things, I highly recommend taking a bodice that already fits you and removing the darts. As you can see, there is no shaping on the Baro't. There's no darts or anything like that. It just tapers in just a little bit at the waist and then tapers out. As far as the hemline here, it is curved a little bit, and that's just a design that I did. I have seen people just do a straight cut here, but I think the nice little curve is a little bit more flattering. So I hope this is really helpful for you all who just wanted to learn a little bit more about the Baro't saya. Again, I said that this was going to be just a brief overview of what it is. If you want to do more research, please do so, as I am not an expert in this field. I'm still learning about it, and I just really love sharing what I know to the community. If you like this type of video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to my channel. As usual, I always welcome comments. I especially would love to learn more about the Baro't saya, so if you have any additional information, I know that I would appreciate it, and I'm sure my subscribers would as well. Until next time!